Today we're going over how to grow your business with Pinterest as a wedding photographer. If you're looking for a way to get new clients without spending all day on social media, Pinterest could be the perfect platform for you. And before we get started, in case you're interested, I offer a DIY Pinterest course or done-for-you Pinterest services on my website. Okay, why Pinterest? Pinterest is the perfect way to reach new clients without the social media hamster wheel. It's a visual search engine, not traditional social media, so the work you put in can last for months or even years. You don't have to film yourself unless you want to, and you can batch pin several days at a time. How Pinterest marketing works for wedding photographers. Pinterest is a great platform to drive traffic to free educational or nurturing content like blog posts, client galleries, or lead magnets, and act as the first step in your funnel. Here's how a Pinterest sales funnel might look. So you start with the eye-catching Pinterest pins, which go to a helpful blog post or page. Then you can have a free lead magnet or service guide, send some nurture emails, and hopefully make sales. So, someone finds your blog posts or photos on Pinterest, they click through and discover you through your website. They may save your pins for later, sign up for your pricing or services guide, or even reach out to you to learn more about your photography services, all because you started with free value on Pinterest. My 2X method for Pinterest. For creative service providers, I like to use my 2X method. So there will be two sides to your content strategy for Pinterest, educational and promotional. That means creating both educational, nurturing blog posts or free content, as well as linking to past client work or service pages. Think of Pinterest as a sales funnel. First, you want to choose where your traffic will go, whether it's a blog post, freebie, client gallery, or service page. Make sure your content solves a problem or answers a question. This will inform your keyword research. And include a strong call to action on each page with the next action you want someone to take, such as filling out your inquiry form or signing up for a free lead magnet. What do you need in place to get started? So I would recommend having your own website and domain, a Pinterest business account with your domain claimed for analytics, at least 10 published blog posts or pages on your website, and ideally a mix of educational blog posts and posts or pages that showcase your client work. So we're not linking to the homepage here. We are linking to specific pages on your website that are optimized for keywords or other questions that your clients might be interested in. Okay, now I'm going to go over how to do keyword research 3 different ways, 2 free and 1 paid. The first method is using the Pinterest search bar. So you can just go to Pinterest, come up here and click on the search icon. And then you can start typing whatever is related to your particular wedding photography niche. So I'm going to go over several different examples. Typically, I recommend going for location-based keywords. You can also do some broader, nurturing, educational type of content, but if you are limited to specific locations, then a lot of your keywords should be location-based, and you definitely want to include those on your boards, descriptions, your profile description, all of that. You certainly want to use your location wherever you can. If you are limited to certain locations or regions, or you're primarily based in certain locations or a certain city, state, etc. But you can also do some broader wedding content to reach more people. But again, if you're only working with people in certain areas, then you definitely want most of your content to be a little more localized and specific. So let's go for some different examples. For instance, let's pretend you're a Denver wedding photographer. So I'm just going to start slowly typing this, and I'm actually just going to start with Denver wedding because it's kind of the broadest one I can go for. So Denver wedding. And then you can see that Pinterest will auto-complete this search with their search suggestions, which happen to be some pretty interesting keyword phrases. You can also see different photographers on here who seem to be optimizing their account. So this is Denver, Colorado wedding photographer, Denver wedding and family photographer. So these people are actually being recommended by Pinterest when you search for even something like Denver wedding. I didn't even search for photographer, just Denver wedding. So sometimes people will come up on here, profiles, but the ones I'm interested in are these keyword phrases. So there's Denver wedding venues, Denver wedding guest outfit, Denver wedding dress, Denver wedding reception venues, Denver wedding photos. That's probably one that you might use in a few different places as a photographer, including perhaps your profile description. Denver wedding dress bridal shops. Now, if that's not relevant to what you're doing, you're not actually a bridal shop, you're probably not going to use those keywords. This isn't about tricking people. This is only about using keywords that actually make sense for your business and what you're selling. But one that tends to work really well for wedding photographers tends to be venue content. So if I look up Denver wedding venues and see what shows up, okay, so it looks like there's some products here and potentially some sponsored pins. That's okay. Okay, so then we're looking at top 5 outdoor Denver wedding venues, or here's a blog post, top Denver wedding venues, Denver's best elopement venue, the best Denver wedding venues, scenic spots to say I do in Denver. This one says, planning a Denver wedding, why couples love the Westin Denver downtown. Denver wedding venues, again, the best Denver wedding venues. So there's a lot of those. So I would certainly recommend this if you're based in a particular location. Let's say you are actually open to, let's say all of Colorado, but instead of doing, reaching super broad, you would want to do some blog posts like this, where it's like, what are the best Denver wedding venues, or the top 5 Denver wedding venues. In this case, there's probably outdoor versus indoor. You could have different blog posts for each of those. And then if you went for different cities, let's say you also do weddings in Boulder, that could be a different blog post. So instead of only doing like Colorado wedding venues, I would get more specific and do Denver wedding venues, Boulder wedding venues. If there's enough to do just the outdoor ones versus a separate one for just the indoor ones, that's something you could do too, so you get more specific. I typically like to see around 2 to 4 words for a keyword phrase is usually a pretty good amount. If it's just one word, that's probably way too broad. Even 2 words is probably too broad for a blog post, but it might be something like a board title, like Denver wedding. You probably wouldn't want to do a blog post with that title, but that could be a potential board title, or Denver wedding photographer, Denver wedding photos, something like that. But the more specific you can get, potentially the less competitive it is, but also you want to make sure that there's actually people searching for it. And there are a few ways to see the popularity, which we'll be going into later. So this would definitely be something you could create content about. And in order to personalize it, I would definitely try to get your own photos in here. So if you've, shot some weddings at some of these venues, then that would definitely be a way to make this a little more personal by including examples from your actual portfolio and client galleries, and then having a call to action at the end to send an inquiry or to reach out to you, something like that. Or if you have like a pricing or services guide, doing a call to action to get people to sign up for that, something like that, or to check out your investment page, something along those lines. Okay, so then we could also do, let's say like Oregon wedding. Okay, so here's another one, Oregon wedding venues outdoors. And it's fine to rearrange this a little bit so it makes grammatical sense. If you say like, outdoor Oregon wedding venues, you can also add a few words to the beginning and end of a keyword phrase just to turn it into a more eye-catching blog post title, and that's fine. So if you had like the 5 best outdoor Oregon wedding venues that every couple loves, something like that makes your pin or your blog post a little more enticing for people to click on. But as long as you have the main keyword phrase contained within it, then you're good to go. But you can certainly even try, maybe outdoor Oregon wedding venues is, the slug for your blog post, and like it's in the URL, but you're always welcome to try different titles on Pinterest and test different things there. Maybe your blog post title is a little more general and it's just like 5 best outdoor Oregon wedding venues, but then you try some more creative ideas on Pinterest. You can definitely try things like that. Okay, and then another approach to take is to have more general content. Now, you are going to reach a broader audience. They're not only going to be in Oregon or Denver or whichever location you're in, but you can reach more people, so it can potentially be useful in your content mix. You just wouldn't want to only have general content, because then you're probably not going to be reaching the right people on Pinterest. But if you had something like maybe like wedding poses, something along those lines. Okay, so then there's ideas like wedding poses for bride and groom, wedding poses for bride, wedding poses couple, wedding poses ideas. So if I just click on one of these, This will also give me more ideas. Yeah, there's like posing, prompt, sunset, wedding aesthetic. Okay, but that one's sponsored, so just keep that in mind. As far as research, like you kind of want to keep an eye on what is organically ranking versus what are people paying for. Now, if you ever have a keyword that this whole thing is just dominated by sponsored pins, you probably want to keep that in mind, that it would be very tricky to rank for unless you are also running ads on Pinterest. But it looks like for this keyword, wedding poses for bride and groom, it looks like a lot of these are just photos. So there are some blog posts like this one, 40 must-have wedding photo ideas and poses, but there's definitely a lot of just photos, and that's something you can definitely do as a photographer. You can do kind of a mix of just regular photos, and this might link to either your client gallery or a blog post. You can even, try to do a mix of both, but you can also do some with the text over it to link to your blog post. Or this one's like, okay, that one's sponsored. 12 must-have photos for your wedding photographer to capture. Now that one is broad, it's not location specific, but that might still be just useful information for your target client to know about. And some people might just find your website and maybe they're just interested in this information. Maybe your actual clients just want to know this, and it's helpful if you have that type of content on your blog as well. Or there's like micro wedding ideas, although that one's sponsored. So that's just a few ways to do the research on Pinterest directly. Another way to find content ideas is with Pinterest Trends, which is trends.pinterest.com, and they will show you different trending topics on Pinterest. Now, if these aren't relevant to you, that's fine, don't sweat it. It tends to be holidays or seasonal content, so if there's any way you can incorporate that, like, if there's like spring wedding ideas, anything like that, if you have weddings that are relevant to that, maybe you want to create content around that. So this one's home decor, but it's up in popularity by 4,000% month over month, which is a lot. So if you had, spring wedding ideas or spring wedding inspiration, that could be something to create content about. And if you're doing anything seasonal or holiday related, you tend to want to do it about 2 to 3 months in advance, just to give Pinterest some time to find your content and for people to find your content and start saving it. Okay, there's also shopping trends, which are probably not super relevant, as well as search trends, editor's picks, or Pinterest predicts. So if you have anything related to this, like, lace seems to be popular, neo-deco, like poetcore, if you have anything related to that, you can try to create new content about it, and that could potentially do well on Pinterest because this is what they are predicting is going to be trendy this year. Okay, and then shopping trends, maybe not as relevant, but you can also search for trends. And this is a way to search for keywords and also see, relatively speaking, how popular the keywords are. So if I were to search for something like, let's say, New York wedding, I'm just going to start slowly typing that. And then this one will also autocomplete. So this one's actually showing some broader ones. Let's see, New York outfits. That one's not showing me the weddings. So I found that not everything shows up on Pinterest Trends. That's okay. I'll try, let's see, California wedding, see if anything shows up for that. It does not. Okay, so this one's not really showing me the location specific ones, but it is showing things like, wedding dresses, wedding ideas, wedding rings. Now, those would be definitely too broad for a blog post title. You'd want to get more specific. Now, if that was relevant to what you're doing, you could probably do that as a board title, something like that. But otherwise, how about I just start typing wedding without a location? Okay, that's still pretty broad. Let's do like wedding photos. Okay, that's a little more specific. So wedding photos poses. And again, you can kind of change that so it grammatically makes sense. Wedding photo shoot ideas. Ooh, courthouse wedding photos. That one is pretty specific, but that could be relevant to what you're doing. And I think that would be an opportunity to feature a specific couple or multiple couples in a blog post. If you have done courthouse weddings before, then you have something a little more unique that other people can't just copy because it is your own work. So clients could see what your work is like, but it's also a fairly popular keyword on Pinterest. So then this graph will show you relatively how popular this keyword is. So it looks like it's in kind of like the 50s and 60s, and then around, looks like fall and winter, it's a lot more popular. Then it's in kind of like the 80s, or 100 is the most popular. in January. So that would be something to keep in mind. Like, this is fairly popular year round, but if you wanted to reach it before, let's say, fall, you'd probably want to actually publish this sometime in the summer, so it has time to get some reach on Pinterest before the peak season. And then there's also some other related trends like courthouse wedding dress, civil wedding dress, elopement dress. I've also found on Pinterest that depending on what types of services you offer, if you do, weddings, elopements, micro weddings, like all of the above, you can definitely get more reach for your content if you kind of target potentially all three or more. So if you have content that's, specifically about weddings, you can do that, but you could also do, elopements, and you can also do micro weddings if it's relevant to what you're doing. And those are just like 3 or possibly more ways that people are searching for very similar ideas, but it just gives you different angles that you can kind of play with. So if someone's doing a courthouse wedding, maybe that is an elopement or maybe that is a micro wedding, but you happen to be able to use at least 3 different ways to kind of phrase the same thing. And potentially this could be different types of content. Now, I wouldn't do like literally the same content and just keep rewording it as different blog posts. But if you have different couples, then instead of doing courthouse wedding photos over and over, maybe one of them is courthouse elopement photos, or courthouse micro wedding photos, or just courthouse micro wedding in Denver, like something like that. So that gives you different angles that you could potentially take as well. It'll also show you demographics, gender, as well as popular pins here. And this is just showing you what's already ranking and kind of like what people are expecting. So in this case, it looks like a lot of photos. I don't really see blog posts on here. I mean, you could certainly try to do both, but in this case, maybe just regular photos would perform better. And then finally, the last way is to use a paid keyword research tool like PinClicks or Pin Inspector. I like this one because it shows you the actual search volume, which can be useful, especially for some of those smaller keywords. Now, some of the wedding keywords can be fairly small in the actual amount of search volume, but they are very high intent. So if someone is searching for this, if someone's searching for like Denver wedding photographer or wedding photos, that's a very specific audience versus like nails. Yes, that has 54 million searches a month, but that's probably not someone who's going to hire you for Denver wedding photos, because this is going to reach just such a broad audience. So even though the search volume for some of the wedding, like location-based keywords, can be a bit lower, they are high intent keywords and they're people who might be looking to hire. So that's just something to keep in mind. So if we did like, let's say Portland wedding venue, just see what comes up, if anything. Okay, I have found that some of these keywords, they might show up in Google, but not necessarily Pinterest. So another thing to keep in mind, that doesn't mean you can't pin it, but there might not be very many, if any, people searching for it if it doesn't show up on here. I can also kind of check and uncheck some of these options to see if it's different. Okay, so if I check that one and make it so it's not just the interests on Pinterest, but also search suggestions, then I can see there actually is Portland wedding venues that shows up. The search volume is only 168, which is fairly low, but most likely these would be the right people you're looking for if you are a Portland wedding photographer, because these would probably just be people who are looking to get married in Portland. It's not going to be a broad audience. It is very hyper specific and localized, which is kind of what you want. So that actually would be a good keyword. Plus, this is fairly small, so it might be less competitive than some of the super, super broad keywords. Now, if I click on that, I can go into the Explore page on Pinterest, and then this is actually showing me kind of a mix of different content. There's some photos like this, as well as I can see some blog posts with the titles like Intimate Wedding Venues, Portland, or Best Indoor Wedding Venues in Portland, Alternative Oregon Wedding Venue Ideas. So those are some different angles you could take. If you wanted to do like all kinds of content, like you could definitely go after like all of these. If you're just like a Portland wedding photographer and you're like, I want to, go after every keyword I can for this specific niche, you could do indoor venues, outdoor venues, alternative venues, anything like that. And you could definitely do separate blog posts for like each and every one of those to maximize your reach, as well as doing different types of pins. So you can certainly share your original photos, as well as having some of these text-based pins. Also, you can see there's different styles of pins too. Like there's these ones with the text at the top. There's also like this style and this one, which doesn't have the box in the background. And that's also something you can play around with and test to see if you can get something to perform a little better for your account and your audience. So yeah, there is some testing involved, and you can always see, try out different keywords, see what happens, try out different styles, try photos versus blog posts, client galleries, all of that. All right, I hope that was helpful. And if you're interested in working together, I offer a DIY Pinterest course or done for you Pinterest services on my website. Let's get your content working for you 24/7.